The Israeli ambassador to the United Nations has slammed the UN Secretary General for daring to address the reasons behind the current conflict, saying that he is unfit for the job and should stand down.
The UN Secretary General, who shows understanding for the campaign of mass murder of children, women, and the elderly, is not fit to lead the UN. I call on him to resign immediately. There is no justification or point in talking to those who show compassion for the most terrible atrocities committed against the citizens of Israel and the Jewish people. There are simply no words.
Well, that statement came in response to the UN Secretary General's address to the Security Council, where he stated that the initial Hamas attacks cannot be considered unprovoked, and both sides must be considered.
I have condemned unequivocally the horrifying and unprecedented 7 October acts of terror by Hamas in Israel. It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation.
Well, both warring sides clashed at the UN meeting to present their sides of the story.
There are so many fronts open for war and none for peace. In Gaza, under the rebels lies over 1,000 Palestinians and all the values and all the norms. Under the bombs, 2 million Palestinians and all the values and all the norms. Abandoning the Palestinian people is betraying those values and norms. You either rescue the international law-based order or leave it to die there.
This war was imposed on us. It's not only Israel's war. It is the war of the free world. I hear the call for proportionality. Tell me, what is a proportionate response for killing of babies? For rape women and burn them, for beheading of a child? How you can agree to a ceasefire with someone who swore to kill and destroy your own existence? How?
All right, let's go live on this right now and crossing live to the coordinator of the Jerusalem Liaison Office for the World Council of Churches. There's Youssef Daher joining us here on RT International. A very warm welcome to you today, sir. Thank you very much for spending your time with us here at RT.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. So I wanted to bring up the statements. The UN Secretary General has expressed his thoughts at the Security Council, saying both sides need to be considered, although Gutierrez did also say that he said the attack from Hamas militants was not unprovoked. Of course, the Israeli ambassador slammed him for saying such a thing. And now the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, he's being told by certain Israeli officials that he should stand down. Why do you think such a strong reaction, sir?
Well, I think the World Council of Churches position goes very much along with the United Nations positions. This is where, when you hear the two sides of the stories on the 7th of October or whatever is happening of a genocide on civilians, most of the time today counting 6,000 civilians dead, is that the World Council of Churches are asking for UN investigation into all these matters, especially once we had the news that the hospital, the Anglican hospital, was hit, and then after 2 days, the church, the Orthodox Church in Gaza, was hit. So this is our demand, and as you know, if things do not go into the benefit or the interest of Israel, Israel will just wipe it out. If somebody is telling the truth, they don't want him, they want him to resign. And as churches here in locally and internationally, we stick with the United Nations positions on this matter, because we would like to see a UN neutral position. We are very shocked by the Western powers who are standing with Israel, who are standing with a state that is killing civilians. They killed 6,000 Palestinians. They did not name more than 10 Hamas leaders among these 6,000. They are still killing and arresting people in the West Bank and Jerusalem. They are bombarding in Syria and bombarding in Lebanon. and everybody on the Western side are standing with them. This is why our only hope is to go along with the United Nations. So the World Council of Churches basically supports what the truth that is coming out from Mr. Gutierrez, who was also neutral on condemning both parties when there is something done wrong.
Well, and I thought also Gutierrez actually flew himself. He got to the Rafah border crossing, didn't he, a couple of days ago? And he was there demanding that the gates are open to allow the humanitarian aid to get through to Gaza. That was the UN chief, Antonio Gutierrez. And he's clearly upsetting some people in the Israeli leadership. Mr. Daher, I wanted to ask you, Gaza officials are saying that more than 12,000 tons of explosives have been dropped by the IDF. Palestinian officials saying that is the equivalent to the Hiroshima bombing back in World War II. What are your thoughts on the widespread bombing campaign in Gaza? There's an awful lot of condemnation coming from all around the world, but as you just said, it's typically the G7 countries who are siding with Israel and much of the rest of the world siding with the Palestinians. 12,000 tons of bombs dropped in a mostly civilian enclave. Your thoughts, Mr. Daher?
Yes, well, our main concern usually is the people who are under this bombardment. If you can see, most of the people, they lost their houses, they lost their loved ones, 6,000 people. Many, we know from our contacts with our Christian community inside Gaza that they lost their homes. This is why they are taking shelter elsewhere. The devastation and the images, if it is a satellite image or any image that you can see, is that you can see whole neighborhoods are wiped out. At the same time, whole families are wiped out from the population list. This never happened. As you said, this reminds us of Hiroshima, this reminds us of Leningrad. I don't know where the Israelis are leading, what is their plan. We don't really care what kind of plan, if it is a military to evacuate a certain space for the battle, or if it is a long-term agenda for Israel. This is genocide. You are killing civilians and you are weeping for some news that you are just trying to promote.
These are very, very strong statements from you, Mr. Daher, and I appreciate you being such a straight shooter on air with us here at RT International. Do you think, I mean, obviously Benjamin Netanyahu, he's feeling pressure from all sides. Politically speaking, he could be in trouble, but it's a bigger picture than that, isn't it? Do you think Netanyahu is listening to the rest of the world when so many other world leaders and organizations have condemned Israel for a very heavy-handed approach? Do you think Netanyahu is listening?
Yeah, I think Netanyahu and the new government, this new far-right government, are not listening. They have their own agenda. They are not even listening to their own people. We remember that Israel is divided, was divided before 7th of October. If you hear some of the women coming out of the areas around Gaza, some of the women who have their children are still kidnapped. Some of the women who the grandmother that was freed yesterday, they didn't like what she said, because she said that they were treating me as a human being. Another woman, which I really would stand there and stop for a moment, she was saying her son is still kidnapped. She was saying that Israel retaliation should be very much well calculated, because we don't want to get into something that cannot be undone. Personally, I think we are beyond that point of no return. There will be no peace with such a government, with such an Israeli leadership. There will be no peace, no two-state solution, no whatever, because the people have so much anger in them now and so much hard feelings, because they lost their ones, because they were treated unjustly by the whole world. They will not accept any peace deal. It will be very difficult.
Now, the coordinator of the Jerusalem Liaison Office for the World Council of Churches, Mr. Youssef Daher, joining us live here on RT International. A very enlightening conversation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.